time for the finals here in the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. It's the last match of this season, and it is going to be between SilverName and Bunnyhoppor. These two players have fought out over many weeks and among all the other players in Grandmasters this season to get to this point, and the winner is going to have a spot at the World Championship. So everything to play for here. Yes, the loser just gets to stay in Grandmasters. There's no more relegations going on this season, but everything on the line for the win. It's the ultimate prize, Sottle, for these players.
It absolutely is. And some of you might be looking on and going, "What SilverName is here? Wait, he's just a streamer. He went 2-5 in the main season. Like, what is he doing here in the finals?" But a lot of people don't appreciate how much of a competitive pedigree that SilverName has behind him, which I think is a very, very big deal. He's a fantastic player. I think he's a deserving player to be here, even though I do think you still have to paint him as the underdog against Bunnyhoppor.
Yeah, and that's purely just because, look at Bunnyhoppor's past, right? He came up as a relatively unknown player, making it to a seasonal championship. But after that, he's just proved time and time again that not only is he just a super high quality player, but his actual just play per turn, per game of Hearthstone is so consistent. He's a player who we rarely see any obvious mistakes from. There might be some optimization things now and again throughout different series, different matches, different tournaments, but in terms of just turn-by-turn play, he's up there with, if not the best player in the world. So we'll see how it's going to go there. He did just beat Yala to get there with a 3-0 victory, but SilverName did beat Ball Control a little bit earlier today with a 3-0 victory as well, so both players on even footing, at least on how they actually got here. We are going to be getting into the match very, very shortly. But both lineups are looking pretty good to me. Although we have had questions about SilverName's Mage, of course. He has been making it work. Lineup could be better, but it has got him here. Whereas meanwhile, Bunnyhoppor's lineup, to me at least, looks very, very strong. And I think I said at the start of this weekend, for this week, I personally would have gone for the Rogue Hunter choice for those decks 3 and 4 to pair, of course, with the almost guaranteed Warrior and Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I think the lineups are kind of representative of them as players to some extent, right? Where Bunnyhoppor himself is a very solid player, very consistent player, doesn't really have a reputation of doing anything too crazy or too flashy. He just plays the best decks to an impeccable standard and is able to just beat players by, overwhelming consistency. Whereas SilverName is the Maverick. He is the X Factor. He is the Enigma wrapped in a riddle, and he continues to rely on this Mage deck going through time after time, week after week. Be it the Spell Mage, be it the Highlander Mage, he has always consistently brought Mage to Grandmasters. And we can argue back and forth about whether, he's actually had a good season in real terms on the back of that. But here he is. He is in the finals. He's won the matches that mattered when they mattered. And even though he only escaped the relegation bracket on tiebreakers, that he has had the long fight through the brackets yesterday and today, or over the weekend in general, to be now all the way here in the finals, and is looking to follow up a crushing 3-0 defeat of Ball Control in the semis.
Yeah, and honestly, just going back to the winner of this will be the player we send this season to the World Championship later on. And for me, I'm super excited either way the outcome goes, right? Because on one hand, we have just the sheer Hearthstone powerhouse that is Bunnyhoppor, just one of the scariest opponents, and maybe one of the players I would least like to face in the series that I was actually bothered about winning, because it most certainly would not happen. But also, on the other hand, if SilverName does get there and does take down Bunnyhoppor, we have just a Maverick going to Worlds, which I think would be great as well. If he's submitting Spell Mage, if he's playing Highlander Mage throughout all this, and even his decks himself, even his Highlander Hunter is playing that secret package, and like it or not, SilverName appears to play what he wants to play, almost regardless of anyone else. And that just adds a spark, or would add a spark to the Worlds as well, if we just have SilverName there. And it's like, okay, so we're expecting this kind of meta and SilverName. because who knows what that's going to be when the time comes. So honestly, we're very lucky, I think, and I think it's true in other regions as well, of course. But for me personally, it's a win-win situation regardless of who wins this match.
Yeah, absolutely. I think either way we can, hold up our champion and say that it's someone that we are very proud and very excited to see going through, albeit for very, very different reasons. But I do still think, that mage was kind of given a free pass in the last series because it ran into a pretty below average draw from Boar Control's Druid, was able to get the win at the first port of call. Otherwise, we might have been instead talking about reverse sweep territory, as the mage wasn't able to find a win against any of Boar Control's decks. We don't know. It's not the world that we live in. But the mage now has one final test to pass here for SilverName, because no questions really about his other two decks. I think they should line up very, very solidly indeed against Bunnyhoppor. Of course, the two warriors are banned out here. The majority of our players through the weekend have been sticking to that warrior ban strategy. I believe it was only Yala that we had that was doing something a little bit different. Although actually Psycho as well was, I believe, leaving up warrior because he had his priest lineup, but did not work out super well for either of those players. Yala put in a pretty excellent performance, but I think actually if you break it down, he went 1-1 over the weekend because of his accelerated positioning through the brackets.
Right, exactly, yeah. And again, I'll just reiterate, personally, if we're just looking at lineups, I do like not only Bunnyhoppor's Hunter and Rogue, but also the builds he's gone for. He is playing the Quest Adventurers in the Rogue. He's not playing the Secret Package in the Hunter. So I just think Bunny's just in that spot where, for me, he's just got it right with submissions this weekend. We saw some players try a few different things. We even saw a preview of what happened in the match on Thursday with Viper's lineup, which was completely out there. But honestly, I just think Bunnyhoppor has just submitted the lineup for this weekend.
You can see what we have dealt with to get to this point. Firstly, that absolute heartbreaker of an opener between Zim and Hunter Ace, which means, if you weren't following earlier, Hunter Ace, former world champion, probably one of the top 5 players in the world still, arguably, has just not been good enough this season, and he has found himself relegated at the hands of Zim after falling all the way through the relegation bracket from the top to the bottom. 3 chances to pick up a win, and he could not do it, and that means Zim is once again defending the honor of France and securing another French position for one more season as a Grandmaster here. And then we moved on to our Worlds qualification games, where it's been nice and simple, really, for the two players that we now see here in the final. SilverName with a 3-0 win over Boar Control. As mentioned, Boar Control had a couple of rough draws, contributing to that being so one-sided. And then really, same story in Bunnyhoppor's matchup against Yala, where Yala did not get the rub of the green.
Yeah, and here we go. It's time, everyone. It's the finals of the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. It's SilverName on the top on this Demon Hunter, and Bunnyhoppor on the bottom on his Highlander Hunter. Again, tough matchup overall for Highlander Hunter. I think it's super important for the Hunter to get hold of the board as early as possible, as aggressively as possible, and then just start pushing the damage. And it really is on the Hunter to be a bit reactive here, because SilverName's Demon Hunter is going to have the more consistent opening and the more, I think, on average, powerful opening.
Bunnyhoppor, as always, taking his time here with the mulligan. The curve looks very smooth, though. Is the issue of whether Frozen Shadow Weaver is actually going to get played in the early game. And wow, Bunnyhoppor says no, throwing away 1 drop into coin 3 into 3 as his early game curve. Looking for smoother options. What do you think he's looking for with the mulligan here? Throwing away 2 pretty strong looking openers.
Yeah, honestly, there's even stronger cards you can get, right? Bunnyhoppor is running an Ooze, which again, although might not be super powerful right now, is a strong tech card here. But really, Fairy Dragon, Imprison Felmore, the Scavengers is very powerful versus Demon Hunter as well, even though you take that turn 2 kind of off to be able to draw it. Your follow-up is very powerful. Zephyrus, of course, but then the weapons as well. Like the Desert Spear, fantastic versus Demon Hunter early game. Stormhammer, just good enough to pretty much one-shot any of their minions they play anyway. So although the opening did look good, it didn't look great. And I think Bunnyhoppor, with the way he's built his deck as well, wants great against Demon Hunter.
SilverName likely going to assert dominance here by attacking face with the Battle Fiend. Understands that it is Bunnyhoppor's job to trade in this scenario, not his.
And I think here with 2 4-drops, being pretty powerful as well, pretty much must remove 4-drops that Bunnyhoppor has access to. I think just Corrosive Breath trade might just be good enough and plant a coin into the 4s next turn.
Yeah, that is the quote punish for the face attack, but still not really. Punish suggests that you've done something wrong. I don't think that face attack is in any way wrong from SilverName.
Quickly.
The only problem with the plan of just going Corrosive Breath and relying on the coin 4s is, especially Feywing is susceptible that if you do this play, it's likely SilverName just rebuilds the board.
Yep.
And then if the minions just straight up trade into the Feywing, although yes, you could argue, well, it's not damage to face, it's not really the outcome you want. You want Feywing to be the most awkward, annoying thing to deal with in the world here for SilverName. But he can go into the Dragonbane instead, or now just deviate completely and just go for the Unleash the Hounds just to kill off this Satyr Overseer.
I always feel like Unleash the Hounds is completely miserable against Demon Hunter. It's like, it's the reverse dynamic of cards like, Livewire Lance or, Breath of the Infinite or Holy Nova, all of these tools where you're like, well, every minion has 2 health, so my source of 2 damage is insane. But, like, that's just the opposite of Unleash the Hounds, right? Every minion has 2 health, so Unleash the Hounds almost always sucks. You get to clear half of a board with it, and it feels terrible.
Bring back Beast Hunter with Timberwolves,
yeah,
okay?
Yeah, right.
That's all I want to see, because that would be insane.
Yeah.
But here, honestly, Unleash, kill the Overseer, and then the 1-1, leave just a 2-2 up, isn't the worst thing in the world. He does get to keep hold of coin as well.
Yeah, it's just a complete concession of tempo, though. That's the problem, right? You're ending the turn behind, and then your opponent gets to fully develop afterwards as well.
It does mean he has Feywing and then maybe coin with Dragonbane the turn after to whip in a Hero Power 2 if there's nothing too great drawn in the meantime.
SilverName not really looking like he's got too much of an Altruist hand right now. Might just be beaming Sidekick.
I like Twin Slice going into turn 5. Oh, I guess he's going to play Umberwing, isn't he? Sorry, yeah, apologies. He's going to play Umberwing.
Right now, his hand is, full of value, essentially. He's got some of the slower cards in his deck with Frozen Shadow Weaver and Gladebound Adept. Oh, not really slow, it's not the right word, but the more expensive cards. So I think he can afford to add a, low-value, high-tempo card to his hand. And that argument, honestly, I'm making could be made for either Twin Slice or Beaming Sidekick in this scenario. But I do suspect it's one of them.
Honestly, a weirdly tough choice, considering how good all 3 of those cards are. But the choice isn't tough because they're all particularly good. It's just working out where they actually fit in the game plan, right?
Right.
I think, yeah, I think it leaned towards Twin Slice because the card is just good. Maybe it's just good enough.
Yeah, I still lean
this is
Beaming
what I was talking
Sidekick.
about a bit earlier.
I think that card is absurd, and I think if it lands on if you make a 4-3 into a 4-5 or a 6-4 into a 6-6, I don't know, I think that is an extremely difficult position for Hunter to be in. But either way, I'm not going to argue too hard. Twin Slice is obviously an absurd Hearthstone card as well.
And this is what I was talking about earlier, right? Feywing, fantastic card, but if it is just already dead on board, then it loses its value of being hard to remove, right? That's like why the card is so good. Like from nothing, it's kind of awkward to deal with. But here, SilverName could kill the Feywing and just carry on with his day and not really worry.
Yep. Insane card when you're ahead. Miserable card when you're behind.
Quickly.
I actually think this might be a tracking for a weapon. I think Bunnyhoppor might be that desperate.
I can get on board, sure.
Because Desert Spear makes this board look a little bit more manageable. It'll take a couple of turns, but it's doable. Okay, he's going to go for this, a little bit more health than the Feywing, and just as much a threat, if not more, to a certain extent.
I agree with your call, but I don't know how much of that is influenced by the fact that we're staring at the Gladebound Adept. Like, we know the worst possible world is actually real, whereas Bunnyhoppor has got to weigh up, you know, actually, if my opponent doesn't have a powerful play this turn, maybe this Dragonbane can cut through enough of the board state that I can climb back into it. But your opponent did also Sightless Watcher and rope it out, which, you know, suggests either all of the options were pretty bad, and I don't really think there are 3 Demon Hunter cards that qualify as really bad, or all 3 options were really good, which was, you know, actually the scenario there.
And also, to be fair, even with us having the knowledge of the hand, Shadow Weavers would be a problem for the weapon, Paul, wouldn't it, as well? Like, one swing of the weapon, then freeze, so it still would have worked out pretty bad for Bunnyhoppor.
Zephyrus +3 available here with coin. So that is a problem when there's a 6/4 on the board. Has to be the pick, though.
Yeah. There's no choice, really, is there?
But then is it just as simple as Shadow Word Death?
I would have respected the Rotnest, though, to just go for it. Just commit.
Yeah, why play a 3/2 to Shadow Word Death it when you can play a 6/5 to Shadow Word Death it instead?
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the problem. This is what I was alluding to when I said it's a big problem when there's a 6/4 on the board. Because Lightning Storm is the kind of forgotten AoE option because it just feels a bit miserable in a lot of situations to be suffering the overload.
And this is the issue, right? It's not as if Bunnyhoppor has a okay, well, I'm overloaded, but this play next turn still does something.
Demons.
It's Feywing. So it doesn't, you know, like it doesn't really achieve too much, right? So there's not even a good backup plan to this Lightning Storm.
Right.
Skull, I think, is just more than okay here. I don't really think. Oh, although, yeah, actually, you could just Skull Twin Slice this.
Yep.
This looks great. I was gonna, even if we were staring at a hand where SilverName couldn't stop the Zephyrus trading, I still think Skull is good because Bunnyhoppor's overloaded. Take the turn Skull, get an insane turn 7, and the Zephyrus almost always has to trade for you anyway. This, though, SilverName saying, nope, don't need it. Gonna use the Twin Slice anyway to kill off this Zephyrus. Gonna freeze face to stop a weapon. Which, again, I talked about earlier. I think any of the weapons are good enough in this matchup to really try and reach for. I do respect this play from SilverName, but now he's probably gonna aim. Well, okay, he's probably definitely gonna aim for the Skull.
Ladies and gentlemen,
definitely.
Mark your calendars, save the date and time, because that was the fastest turn of Hearthstone you will ever see Bunnyhoppor play.
Yeah.
Zephyrus gone. As long as SilverName can deal 5 damage this turn, he has a guaranteed lethal setup on the follow-up. He cannot quite do that, but seems close enough regardless.
Yep, and even if his minions get dealt with, he has the mana to hero power, meta hero power, right? So he can actually just do 6, no problemo.
Yeah, the problem would come from some giant taunt minion out of nowhere, but that's not really the reality, and even then he'd have Warglaives to be able to plow through.
Now looks like that is going to be game, and you know it's a rough spot when Feywing was available for most of the game, and it ended up doing nothing for Bunnyhoppor there. No weapon being a bit of a big deal, and also no early Zephyrus to try and peel off some of the board quick enough for it to make an impact. But overall, SilverName just got hold of it with his Demon Hunter, and he's going to get hold of this series, going up to a 1-0 win so far.
Yeah, SilverName off to an absolute flyer here, now one step closer to realizing the dream of making it to the World Championship. Bunnyhoppor having the uphill climb in front of him. But the Demon Hunter picking up a win in the series, I don't think is overall too big of a deal. I think that is a thing that is likely to happen from both sides. I think the Hunter and the Mage from SilverName are bigger question marks. Because although, you know, we said we like the way that Bunnyhoppor has built his Hunter, SilverName's Hunter is a little bit more, say, old-fashioned or a little bit more ladder in the way that he's put it together, because he has the secret package with the Phase Stalker, which generally isn't seen in competitive play. So I still have one or two questions about the consistency of his Hunter build as well. But at least he is now on the board. Demon Hunter, as I said, did seem like the easiest deck to pick up a win with, but he has done it, and he has taken one step closer to ending Season 1 of 20 as our Hearthstone Grandmasters champion for Europe.
Yeah, that's the important thing, isn't it? Just whether the games matter or the wins matter as much as other wins are more likely or less likely. Getting the wins on the board is going to help, and it does look like he's going to go onto his Hunter list. And you can see there what Sottle was talking about: Snake Trap, Freezing Trap, and of course the Phase Stalker to make that a little bit smoother overall. But for me personally, the Snake Trap, I understand why snakes in this, just as bad as I think Freezing Trap is. Well, Snake Trap is, I want to say, it's kind of the opposite, at least of what it does. And I appreciate the Snake Trap in the list, but without the support of other good secrets, I don't think it is good enough. But again, we saw the Snake Trap get some work done in the last series for SilverName, so we'll see if it pays off again.
Yeah, it was a very nice setup to overwhelm board control's numbers on board with the Unleash the Hounds and the Snake Trap being played in the same turn, just to set up for a Varanus on the following turn, which was very nicely executed from SilverName indeed. So once again, feel like a broken record on this one. As much as we disagree, or may disagree, with the way he's built his decks, he certainly knows them inside and out, and he knows how to pilot them to maximum efficiency.
Yeah, it's going to be a Hunter Mirror. My favorite matchup. It's not.
Narrator voice. It wasn't. SilverName Snap keeps the Zephyrus, 2 moles the rest. Doesn't really get the best options coming back into his hand. You do get this miserable scenario sometimes where you start to fill up your hand with all of the rush minions one by one, and then slowly they start to not gain value off each other.
Griffin is not bad, though. It's not really a card you want in the mulligan, but in this matchup, it beats all the other 3 drops and most of the 4 drops as well, right? If we're just looking at specifically Feywing.
Sure, it runs even with all of the other 3 drops.
Oh, okay, sure.
It doesn't beat any of them.
Yeah, okay. You know what I mean. Well, it draws a card as well, so... but yeah...
I mean, yeah, sure.
Because what's important in this matchup is if you're not the one steamrolling ahead, at least at minimum have the tools to not fall too far behind, right? And obviously, you could say, well, Griffin's a bad card in the mulligan because it means you don't get ahead. Yes, completely right. I'm not saying the Griffin's a good card in this mulligan, but it's got a use in the early game. It's much better than, say, that being a high-costed card from the deck, right? At least it does do a job. Now the real test. Is this a Zephyrus backstab?
Your wish is my
It absolutely is, yeah.
Has to be. Has to be.
Obviously, you'd like to do something slightly higher impact with your Zephyrus here, but I think you're just going to start falling behind on board quite rapidly if you don't. Your opponent has 1 drop, you are going first, and you are not playing a 1 drop, then your opponent does. That essentially means that the dynamic of the matchup has flipped, and your opponent was then on the play, but they also then still have the coin in hand, which means that they are going to run away with proceedings quite well.
SilverName taking his time, thinking about with his hand, maybe he thinks Wild Growth is going to pay it off. He does have Faceless Corruptor, he does have Rotnest Drake and Dragons.
I am shocked, Raven.
And maybe if he thinks this 2-2 trades into the Zephyrus, and then even if another minion's played, so let's just play it out. Fairy Dragon gets played this turn, say. The 2-2 goes in and trades. Bunnyhoppor a turn ahead. Maybe he thinks the ramp, with the fact that the minions he has have Rush and the snap removal from Rotnest Drake, maybe think that's enough to recover from the bits of extra damage he'll take and tempo loss in the slightly earlier game.
Do you agree with him, though, Raven?
No, because the big deal here for me is if he backstabs the 2-2 and Bunnyhoppor just doesn't have a strong return play, then SilverName has follow-up, right? It's not like he didn't have a turn 3 play, and that's what I think scares me the most. If his hand was all high cost, I'd be like, right, well, you've got to get to your hand, right? You've got to be able to just play the cards you have.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was 3 costs that were very, very playable.
Yeah, that's the part that confuses me just a little bit. Is
Yeah.
you know, generally when you see the Wild Growth get taken, there's like a Siamat Brand Dragon Queen Alexstrasza hand, right? Like those are the cards that really hit the big payoffs for the Wild Growth.
And the problem is, rightly or wrongly, I think SilverName has to play the Wild Growth no matter what there.
Yeah, he has to play it there. If he doesn't play it there,
That's what I mean, yeah.
He's not getting. If he doesn't play it there, he doesn't get the advantage out of being able to play a 5-drop next turn, which is presumably the whole reason he took it in the first place.
Exactly,
so he's kind of just like he's just conceding the whole point at that stage. So yeah, this is the line he's taken. He is at least remaining consistent with it.
But again, the although he gets to Rot Nest, he does so on a very likely multi-minion board because his Zephyrus didn't backstab the 2/2. And again, on average, you have to assume with such a low curve from Highlander Hunter that Bunnyhoppor will have at least one additional minion by turn 4 or 3.
Yep.
Oh.
Ooh, very nice indeed. Stormhammer with Fairy Dragon in hand. There is some Desert Spear options here instead, which does play nicely with that Faceless Corruptor that he has coming up.
I was actually looking at Desert Spear over Stormhammer, and it feels weird to say those words.
I feel
especially
dirty
in
and
Hunter
unpleasant just mentioning it.
And especially in Hunter, because health is actually a huge deal. If you get ahead with health in Hunter, then you can almost ignore what your opponent then does for the rest of the game because they don't have the tools to catch up.
Right.
But Spit is a great card, and as you mentioned, with exactly Corruptor in hand, Bunnyhoppor could just make SilverName not stick a minion for the rest of the game.
Right. I do
definitely. It will cost him his Misha.
Yes. I do definitely agree with that point of getting ahead on damage in the mirror, though, and it's particularly in this scenario. Because I think one of the few dangers of getting ahead on damage in the mirror and just playing for that method is like you start pressing your hero power every turn, your opponent's spending all of their mana on minions trying to catch up, and then maybe Zephyrus comes down late game and there's just a healing touch or something which ruins everyone's plans. But both Zephyrus are now gone, so these are 100% honest health totals at this point. Just what you see is what you get. So if you can efficiently push damage, I think that's pretty strong. But yes, I do agree. Faceless Corruptor seems way too strong to turn down on curve here.
Yeah, and although I said it would cost him a Misha, that was first glance. I like this much better. Take the 6 damage. Bunnyhoppor still plenty ahead on health, and at worst case, well, one, the Misha's just harder to get dealt with, but even if it does, and even if SilverName just equips a weapon this turn and doesn't swing for whatever reason, well, Bunnyhoppor could just make the Corruptors anyway. They don't have to rush into anything. Just make 2 4/4s next turn.
Right.
It's good, and that's why I like the Spear, because it's good almost no matter what happens and no matter what SilverName does. And he can still just bail out and equip the Stormhammer afterwards, right? You really don't want to do that the other way round.
Quickly.
And in the same likelihood, this is where things get a little bit tricky. I think it would be important for SilverName to have that Spear equipped, but it means he takes even more damage, which I think is why he's torn over using Zixor or the Spear.
Yeah, the way he goes about doing it, though, he might end up having to use his Face Stalker for the Faceless Corruptor on the following turn.
I wonder.
To be able to counteract Bunnyhoppor's push.
Spear, right?
Yep.
I like doing it this way as well from Bunnyhoppor. Take a tiny bit of damage, but you're still ahead, and then it'll just have no damage dealt to the Faceless.
Right.
We say it pay off, right? If he used the Faceless to trade, then this Scale Rider would kill one. No, there's just nothing that really deals 4. Apart from, obviously, the Faceless of your opponent.
Yeah. Yeah, Dragonbane maybe is about the only other thing you'd have to be worried about.
Right.
Even then, it's only taking down one of them. Yeah,
and the other one kills it, right? And if this is even, then great. Bunnyhoppor goes again.
But this is where SilverName suffers with his trying to protect some face damage on the previous turn. It does mean that his turns have become less efficient. Honestly, that's the one big advantage he should have right now, is he's gained the extra mana from Wild Growth. He should be the one making more efficient plays. It's got to be the big boy, right?
Not Grand Slam, yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that might be second choice, honestly. I think like Big Ol' Whelp and Nagran Slam are filling similar purposes in my mind right now, which is just making sure Bunnyhoppor does not run out of things to do from now until the end of the game. It's just the argument about whether the end of that game comes quickly or whether it comes slowly. I think leaning towards quickly is probably where Bunnyhoppor should be interested.
I do like the Scale Rider, though, this turn.
Nah.
Quickly.
Disagree. I think having the Big Ol' Whelp in play and then next turn you can lead Stormhammer if it survives is potentially game-winning.
But the problem is it deactivates your Scale Rider and your Corrosive Breath.
Yeah.
That's a lot of damage. Bunnyhoppor did it, so I'm right.
Okay. Chalk one up to Raven.
This is the point I always talk about in Hunter Mirrors is because Bunnyhoppor is a reasonable chunk ahead on health and is against an empty board right now, he can make the more face damage focused plays because he's gained this health advantage, and it's only going to get bigger if he does this play. And as I said, this means next turn he can Stormhammer and still Corrosive Breath. And it's not like he's just not played any board himself. And although there is an answer here for SilverName, Bunnyhoppor still gets to just push a ton of damage, and SilverName has dealt 0. So the gap's just getting bigger and bigger.
So I would argue by playing less stats on that turn, you start to lose your ability to just go face every turn. I think I might concede the point just because if you evaluate how much the Hunter might be able to swing the board by, I don't think it's ever more than by Corrosive Breath unless Zix or Prime was top decked exactly. In which case,
right.
Yeah, GG. That was a nice game of Hearthstone, everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, if it's only swung by that amount, then your line makes sense where you can then just consistently Corrosive Breath and push damage with the Stormhammer on the following turn. But if you ever get into a world where it starts getting swung by more than that, and that you're still behind then on the following turn after your Corrosive Breath, I think that's potentially where you could get into trouble.
Right.
But I'm with you.
And I do think, going back to your earlier point, Zephyrus not being involved in this game of Hearthstone for a while now does obviously change these things because the game becomes more linear in terms of what can actually happen. So yeah, that does obviously make a big impact. Bone Wraith can be a bit annoying with the weapon, but this is the point where now SilverName's on 5 health. Every time. I would have already played it, so I would have already pressed the hero power and just believe. What are you waiting for, Bunny? It's lethal.
What are you waiting for?
You can still Scavengers as well with that turn, and I think there isn't a world in which Bunnyhoppor isn't pressing hero power here.
Agreed.
And although I sort of half-jokingly insta-said about Dragonbane, I think if you can hero power, you can Scavengers. Is Dragonbane that unlikely? I don't think he wants to play Zixor and then use his last swing into a Bone Wraith, because why swing into the last bit of the Bone Wraith to open up damage in which you're losing your weapon for anyway?
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't have to go face. Even if it doesn't go face, if it hits the 2/5, then he's able to push the weapon through to face on the following turn anyway, which accelerates his win condition. Even outside of that, even if he never gets to hit face with this weapon, he's still just 2 turns away from winning the game in the position that he's in right now. So if he plays a must-kill minion, then SilverName must kill it. Kind of the clue is in the name right now. So that means that those minions are not going face. That means potentially one more turn where you just press your hero power and the game ends.
Yeah. And it happens very, very often in the matchup if one player gets significantly ahead. Because as you said, Hunter doesn't really have the way to efficiently deal with minions whilst putting pressure on. It does one or the other. And we see now, as you said, Dragonbane must kill minion. at minimum, it's got to soak this 2-3 poison.
Does he just have to go face? He needs to count his clock, right? Because he has to win next turn immediately.
Sorry, it's 3, and then he has 3, 6, sorry. He needs 3 damage, so that wouldn't have done it anyway, right?
No, he needs 1 damage. He didn't count hero power, it looks like. He has 13.
Oh, right, yeah. Yep, you're right.
So it would have made the difference. He does potentially, obviously, if he doesn't die, he loses one of his minions to the Dragonbane hero power anyway. So you can kind of cancel that out, I suppose.
You see there, Bunnyhoppor for going.
Oh!
What's the draw?
Dragonbane!
Wait a minute.
Dragonbane off the top! What? He'd have to sink 5 damage into the 5/5 anyway
6,
to play around
7,
it.
8. Wait, he's 1 off, right?
Yeah.
If he traded.
He's 1 off whether he goes face or trades. It's 5 damage for 5 damage. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
He just has to win the 50-50. This is it. This is what this game has come down to.
Look at him keeping us waiting. Two turns, 7 of them. Just press the button. I'm getting stressed out.
This is unbearable.
Bunnyhopper's literally trying to dodge it, but it's not enough. Dodging on camera doesn't quite help out there, Bunnyhoppor. And SilverName on 1 health, just like that, goes 2-0 up in this series. Is this going to be the third 3-0 we see today, Sottle? And it's the final against Bunnyhoppor.
If you ever doubted...
And it's Mage.
If you ever doubted that man was a streamer, that was it right there. That was performance art. He had us all dangling by a thread as he sat for his entire turn waiting to press that hero power button. I'm sure in reality he was just double, triple, quadruple checking that there was no way to do anything super fancy in that scenario to make something happen. But in the end, was just going to come down to a 50-50, and it's a 50-50 that he was able to pick up. But yeah, I think still a couple of interesting turns that you can certainly look at in that game as to how it broken down. Whether or not the wild growth actually paid out in a weird way for SilverName at the end there, I'm not quite so sure it did. Smaller minion, more damage, the point we debated in the mid game there for Bunnyhoppor and whether that has a big impact or not. And the decision to trade at the end into the Dragonbane, which, obviously it seems so obvious that you have to kill Dragonbane in that position. And I'd have to go back and look at it very, very carefully to consider lethal outs the other way around. But I think if you want to pick out some key turns to debate, those were probably the big ones.
Yeah, and we saw it on SilverName's face there. Even though obviously he won, he looks, almost emotional at this point, right? It means a lot, and maybe we've brought everyone down a little bit by talking so much over the course of Grandmasters about fighting off relegation. If you're in this division, you're safe. If you're in this division, it's way harder. You might be relegated. You might lose. You might fall out of Grandmasters. Well, now is the time to flip that on its head. SilverName is 1 game away from getting a spot at the World Championships, regardless of what happens next season in Grandmasters. He will earn his spot today.
Oh no, Raven! No, not like this.
And he might earn that spot with a Dragoncaster puzzle box of Yogg-Saron.
It's just the streamer keep. Of course it is. Of course it is. Oh,
you've got a good hand.
My goodness. All right. Here's the problem. No dragon. And we've been through this before. It's incredibly likely that you pick up a dragon before you get to turn 6 when you are playing mage, even with the limited number that you do play. But still, SilverName is going to need some help here, and he does have the Arcane Intellect, and as Raven was just alluding to, I would assume, even if he doesn't just have the insane Dragoncaster on turn 5, he's still able to coin out Reno, which is incredibly effective against Hunter in its own right.
Yeah, his hand's just pretty good, even though he kept a 10 drop, which kind of isn't a 10 drop, of course. You know what I mean, guys.
Yeah.
Here, though, on the other hand, looking at Bunnyhoppor's opening, he did, I believe, throw away a Stormhammer in his opening hand, unless I'm going crazy and just imagining that because it's just that kind of day. I don't know.
No, I think he tossed it.
Yeah, but he does have the battle mage. He didn't have a dragon though, as with it as well. So,
well, it's been fun, folks. Oh my goodness! Is this what it comes to?
It's you know what makes it worse, or you know what I mean. But you know what makes it worse? The coin. It's not even an honest dragon caster.
Here, Raven. It's the coin.
It's not even an honest dragon caster, is it? It's not happy with using a 10 cost card on turn 6. That's already a lot of mana save. No, it's providing an extra discount with the help of its friend the coin. Coming out on a potential turn 5 for SilverName.
Bunnyhoppor, a fair amount of nervous energy coming out from Bunnyhoppor right now on his side of the camera, I would say. Which is not really something I'm super used to watching, even, you know, in very, very high-stakes matches that he has played a ton of during his career.
But this is what I was talking about before we saw the ridiculousness of the box, right? Mm-hmm. Is that we've talked about all the stress of relegation, of losing.
Yeah.
Well, this is the stress of... This is literally the goal for any Hearthstone player that wants to play professionally. The goal is to become the world champion. It's the top goal that anyone and everyone will want. And Bunnyhoppor is one loss away from having to, you know, better luck next time. Double 2-drop here seems pretty good for me. Foregoes the hero power, but still, that's a good couple of minions there. Start piling on some pressure.
And I think based on this opening from SilverName, Bunnyhoppor is starting to paint a pretty vivid picture of what is in the hand. He will be thinking most likely it's either Reno or it's some kind of big Dragoncaster scam. Little does he know it's both, but he will be, you know, considering the implications of, you know, turn 5 Power of Creation, turn 5 Deep Freeze, turn 5 Reno. Doesn't really look like he has a hand that's going to be able to play around the turn 5 Reno right now, although Faceless Corruptor might just about help him get there.
Yeah, and playing both minions out makes it as likely as possible to land that Faceless Corruptor.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it. I mean, I'm a fan of pressing hero power as often as possible versus Mage, especially when he has that aggressive hand. But Bone Chewer is a good enough card, I think, to get the job done. It demands respect. And it can't just be pinged away and set up for any kind of removal, right?
Oh,
well,
looked like just a Mana Saber turn. But now there is an enormous 50-50 here off the Ancient Mysteries. And honestly, actually, either outcome is just fine.
Yeah, I was just going to say yes and no, actually, because I know what you mean, Subtle, with the Flame Ward clearing the board. But if it's Ice Barrier +8, you'll take it.
Right.
It was effectively deal with the board or negate the turn's worth of attack, or like you said, Mana Saber. I think SilverName's happy with any outcome from that Secret Ball.
Yep. He does get the one that means he is probably going to have to rely on this box more so than this Reno because the board is not going anywhere right now. But we have to remember that Bunnyhoppor does not know what the situation is with the secret, so he might even be choosing not to attack here, which would make life very interesting. Well, I mean, I would imagine not, based on the amount of health that we'll probably see him play at the end of the turn, because even then, like, even if just Big Ol' Whelp comes down here, which is adding less to the board, it's still 12.
Quickly.
Yeah. Yes. I absolutely would, but I am not a crazy person. I don't pretend to know. Exactly, yeah. Oh!
And here we go. Here comes the box.
Big Whiff on the first spell, still nothing. He really needs 4 clears as a matter of priority. That's insane. That's also insane.
For who? Look at this Bone Chewer.
What?
Oh!
Oh! Are you kidding me, Raven?
He's just dead! What is Bunnyhoppor supposed to do about that? Everything. The sticky minions. The clear that didn't clear the whole board, of course. But the Light Forged. Some level of lifesteal, unless it demands that corrosive breath. But if Bunny corrosive breath, so what? What's he going to do about the rest of it? And look at SilverName. All he's bothered about is this one turn from Bunnyhoppor. What is the response to this box? And if it isn't just completely good enough, then it looks like SilverName's going to take this game, because I don't know how Bunnyhopper's supposed to fight back here.
Dude, the Hagatha scheme was just BM. That's not okay. There was a hope. There was a 6-1 in play. There was so much damage that could go face and actually represent some kind of win condition. And then right on the last spell, the Hagatha scheme for that last 1 damage.
Okay, so realistically, is it ever... Yeah, this and Desert Spear. Set up the Desert Spear for Varanus.
Yeah.
Was he just going face? So it's 22, but of course there's the second
twin
Light
spell.
Forge.
Yeah. SilverName's emotions on that previous turn were so hard to read. Like, I think there was fear, there was excitement. I think there was also an element of an embarrassment, honestly, in the look that he had on his face at that point as to how insane that box was at this point. But the face push, yeah, I think it's immediately going to get shut down by this Lightforge Blessing here.
Also, am I seeing things? Is that Solarian buffed? Oh, it was drawn with the
Call to Adventure.
Call to Adventure.
Yeah.
Why is Solarian doesn't need a buff? What's going on? Hasn't Bunnyhoppor been through enough? But yeah, the twin spell effect does work, even though it's cast by box. The spell gets cast. Which means that heal up back to SilverName is going to put him at the extremely safe 20. Can push a ton of damage. Yes, the spear's equipped. Yes, there's a Varanus, but that's still only killing 2 things. And Bunnyhoppor has to face tank if he wants to kill both. And there's this gigantic Solarian as well.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
And there's just nothing. Apart from Zephyrus. What will it offer him here? Hero Power Frost Nova?
I mean, he can pop the can and then take a brawl and win it. That's an out, I guess.
Puts him to 8. Reasonable, honestly, against Mage.
I wonder.
Yeah, Shadow Word Ruin not good enough. Chaos Nova is interesting, I guess, because of the 2 attacks that you can send through to the 5 health minions.
Would leave the can up though, right? So he'd effectively be on 4. Oh, he's going to attack and get the brawl like this.
Okay.
So he's not going to take 4 this turn. Takes 4 next turn. But that would, if he well, regardless of outcome, but it would be as if he attacked anyway. But now he's going to take 8 instead.
Exactly, yeah, that's the downside.
That's the downside, yeah.
And now, Malagos Frostbolt?
Yep.
If SilverName wants to go for it here, could be the
It's
card that seals the World Championship performance.
But also Rusteed. Is there actually just a way for that to be punished?
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do that probably win the game over time. I'm just wondering whether he wants to win the game immediately.
I wasn't expecting Arcane Intellect, honestly. Oh, the Mana Saber gives him Alex, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that why? It gives him okay. It gives him both Alexes. I was meaning the regular Alex, so he can self-heal even if there's tons of big bursts coming his way.
Sure. I mean, if you want to be ludicrously pessimistic, but it doesn't matter now. Very little seems to matter. SilverName with the biggest pop-off. SilverName, the man, the maniac, the legend himself, is going to the World Championship as Europe's representative for Season 1 in 2020. Huge congratulations to him. That was an insane and absurd way of doing it, of course, but 3-0, 3-0 through the bracket on the final day. What a performance.
Yeah, you might not be the biggest fan of the Yogg box, but you can't argue with just SilverName's results over the course of this weekend. He put in the work, he got there, and most importantly, like you said, he's won. He is going to be through, and he is going to have his spot at the World Championship. So just a huge congratulations. And again, you know, people might not really peg SilverName for a top-level player, but one, he's been playing this game for a long time. He's got an extremely popular and successful stream, but also you see what that means to him, right? It's one of the biggest reactions I've seen from many of the Hearthstone players here. So not only, yes, very successful streamer, very strong player, but now he's going to be at Worlds, and we just saw what that meant to him. And I can only imagine what his community is going to react like when they find out, because obviously we are in a delay here, but I imagine it's going to be nuts, Sottle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the number one thing that I appreciate about SilverName. Although he is a full-time streamer by trade, he shows up, he is ready, he is prepared, he looks like, you know, he's understanding the metagame, he knows what he's doing, and he also cares. Like, you can see that he cares. He is competitive, he wants to win. This is not just some kind of side gig for him, he is invested in it. And I'll recap the competitive history one more time if you missed it at the start. Like, he has a second place at ESL Katowice 2016 under his belt, lost to AK Wonder in the finals. He came first in the World Cyber Arena in 2016. He was top 8 in WESG in 2018. He lost to the eventual winner in purple. You add that up with a bunch of other strong results, he has over $110,000, I think, in career earnings. Not from streaming, from competing in and winning Hearthstone tournaments. Like, this is a man with a serious competitive pedigree, and even if you just view him as a streamer now, he certainly has the history, you know, almost to the level of a Tice or a Calento, who you might be viewing as a more streamer-based player now, but they still have the enormous level of respect for what they've achieved in the past. And personally, I think SilverName should receive that same level of respect, and he can just show up like he did this weekend and show out and pop off and run off camera and not let us see it, which, come on, come back and do it right in front of the camera where we can see you pop off. But apart from that, I think he handled everything brilliantly this weekend.
And honestly, I said it before we got into the final about SilverName, but I am now very excited to see what he does at the World Championship, right? Like, I mean, what is he even going to bring? Because I have no doubt that what he's going to bring is what he wants to bring, and that's it. There's going to be no, oh, well, you know, this deck might not be good enough. He pretty much did this whole run from start to finish with Reno Mage, or at least some form of Mage, when we've seen Reno Mage pretty much just drop off, right? It's just not been really a deck that's existed for the other Grandmasters for weeks on end now. There was a few people playing with it right at the beginning in Swiss, but that only got represented less as time has gone on, but not SilverName. He stuck with it, and it ended up being the last deck he played for his winning victory with the help of a Yogg box. So a huge, huge deal overall. But that does mean, after a long season, we are done. And we are done for this season as well. There is still Americas coming up with Frodan and Doe for their final day, of course. So make sure to stay tuned and check that out. But before we go, Sottle, final words.
Yeah, final words. Huge congratulations to SilverName once again. Huge congratulations to Zim for escaping on the final day, as well as to Felkane and to... Oh, the last name's going to slip my mind now. That's embarrassing. Who else got out of the relegation bracket? Felkane
Tice.
and Tice, yeah, of course. And then huge commiserations, of course, to Pavel, to Kalento, and of course to Hunter Ace, which is a staggering list of names to have to read out as our relegated players from Hearthstone Grandmasters. That is both of the European representatives in the Hall of World Champions that made it to GM. Of course, the other one being Oskaka alongside them, and we have lost them all. But we do want to end this day on a high note, so I just one more time just want to say you do not want to miss anything that comes up at the World Championship involving SilverName, because I promise you he is going to put on a show. And speaking of putting on a show, we still have plenty more shows to put on, because we now roll into the Masters Tour circuit, which will be continuing in Jönköping the very next weekend after we are done here with Grandmasters. And there are now a lot more stories to tell in the Masters Tour as well, with the way that some of these relegations have panned out. Some of these players are going to be looking to fight their way back in. And even if it's new blood that's able to come through the Masters Tour system, look at the shoes they now have to fill with the departed players being Kalento, being Pavel, and being Hunter Ace. I cannot wait to find out who our next set of Grandmasters are going to be.
Yeah, it's been an incredible season for me. I've super enjoyed casting EU for my first time for Grandmasters. It's been a ton of fun. I have no doubt the future seasons are going to be the same. But as Sotil did mention, although we are done for Grandmasters here in the European region, we have Masters Tour Jönköping coming up next weekend. So make sure you subscribe and still get all those notifications, get all those alerts set, because it will be here on the Hearthstone Esports YouTube. It will be broadcast, and I will be there at least. So thanks a lot for watching again from Sotil and myself. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.